Zorath's ship sliced through the dense atmosphere of Earth, a quiet, gleaming spear of alien technology. Its descent was flawless, and it landed in a remote region far from human civilization, hidden from prying eyes. The planet was primitive compared to the vast, technologically advanced worlds he had visited in his career, but it was no less important to his mission. He had been given orders by the Carian Empire: eliminate Marcus Evans, a human diplomat whose growing influence threatened their control over intergalactic negotiations. Zorath had carried out assassinations before, many times, but never on a world like this. Earth was unpredictable, and Zorath was a predator. But even predators sometimes pause before the hunt. The first thing he noticed when his boots hit the soil was the strange, almost tangible vibrancy of Earth. The air was thick with life, something that felt almost alive in its own way. Zorath had spent years in alien worlds, some dead and barren, others in the midst of wars where only the strong survived. He was used to death, to quiet planets where everything had been wiped clean. But this world, this small blue planet, had something different. Its people, fragile as they were, lived in constant motion. There was always something alive, something happening. The endless energy from the humans was almost overwhelming. Zorath's mission was clear. Marcus Evans was to die. His influence over the human race had grown too large, and the Carians couldn't risk allowing him to succeed. He was standing in the way of the Empire's grand designs. But as he crouched in the shadows of the trees, Zorath's mind began to drift, uncharacteristically distracted. What was it about this place that unsettled him so? He had expected weakness, fear. The humans, after all, had barely been able to protect their own planet from a small group of alien invaders before. The Carian Empire had crushed lesser species with ease. Zorath, like all his kind, had been taught that humanity was a mere footnote in the grand history of the galaxy, a species too young and too insignificant to stand in the way of true power. But as he watched a group of humans in the distance working together to repair a piece of their broken technology, something inside him stirred. They were organizing, building, adapting. It was strange, something Zorath wasn't used to seeing. It was almost like they were evolving right before his eyes. He shook off the thoughts. Focus, he told himself. This was no time for distractions. He had a job to do. He adjusted the cloak on his armor and moved swiftly, stalking through the woods toward the human city where Marcus Evans was scheduled to give his speech. The diplomat was expected to address a crowd of thousands in an open-air amphitheater. Zorath would find him there. One swift strike, and the mission would be over. Earth would be none the wiser, and he could leave without a trace, as he had done countless times before. But as Zorath moved through the underbrush, he couldn't shake the strange feeling gnawing at him. The humans, with all their weaknesses and limitations, weren't like the other species he had killed. There was something compelling about them. He had no words for it, but it was there, a flicker of doubt. Zorath cursed under his breath. He couldn't afford such thoughts. Not now. His mission had only just begun. The sun was setting as Zorath made his way through the city, blending into the shadows of towering buildings. The air was thick with the scent of food vendors, the hum of distant conversations, and the unmistakable buzz of anticipation. He had observed humanity long enough to know that moments like these, moments of change, brought out their best. Marcus Evans, a name that had started to echo through the corridors of power, was about to speak to the masses. The city was electric with the promise of hope, and Zorath couldn't help but feel the weight of it. The humans called it a speech, but he knew what it really was, a moment that could shift the course of history. Marcus had become a symbol of unity in the chaos of human politics. His voice had begun to rally people from all walks of life, from the impoverished to the elite. The Carian Empire feared what he represented: peace, collaboration, change. For the first time, humanity was on the verge of truly uniting, and the Empire couldn't afford that. Zorath moved through the crowd, his senses sharp, alert. He could feel the energy of the humans around him, their hearts beating in time with the excitement. The amphitheater loomed ahead, a giant open space filled with thousands of eager faces, all waiting for their leader to speak. Zorath's eyes narrowed as he spotted Marcus standing at the center of the stage, a solitary figure bathed in light. The moment had arrived. The crowd quieted as Marcus raised his hand, signaling for attention. His voice, deep and resonant, echoed across the amphitheater. For too long, we have been divided. Divided by borders, by fear, by those who seek power for their own gain. But today, we stand at the threshold of a new era. An era where we, as humans, can work together with others. An era where we are not defined by the limits of our differences, but by the strength of our unity. Zorath remained hidden in the shadows, listening. His mind remained sharp, focusing on the mission. Kill the diplomat *, the orders repeated in his mind, cold and direct. His hand rested on the weapon hidden beneath his cloak, and his fingers flexed, preparing for the strike. One moment, that was all it would take. But as he stood there, something strange tugged at him. The words, the conviction in Marcus' voice, had a power to them. Zorath had seen countless speeches before, from both his enemies and his allies. But this felt different. The crowd was mesmerized, hanging on every word. They didn't just listen. They believed. Zorath could see the emotion on their faces, hope, fear, desire, and he couldn't help but wonder if they truly understood what they were fighting for. Together, Marcus continued, we can create a future not just for ourselves, but for those who have yet to come. Together, we can build a bridge to the stars. We can build something that lasts. His eyes swept across the crowd, landing on individuals who held his gaze with unwavering faith. It will be difficult. It will take sacrifice. But I believe in humanity's ability to rise to the occasion. Zorath felt an unfamiliar feeling stir within him, something he had never experienced on his countless missions. It wasn't fear. It wasn't admiration. It was something deeper, an unsettling sense that humanity, despite its flaws, had the strength to change things. And for reasons he couldn't explain, it made him pause. His instincts screamed at him to move, to finish the mission. But for the first time, his resolve wavered. He wasn't sure what was happening, but the human spirit, so raw, so alive, was unlike anything he had ever encountered. And it was enough to make him question everything he thought he knew about humanity. Focus, he thought, shaking the thoughts from his mind. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and Zorath found it impossible to ignore. Zorath could feel the tension in his body as he watched Marcus finish his speech. The crowd erupted into applause, their cheers reverberating through the open air, filling the space with a sound of unity and hope. But Zorath barely noticed the noise. His focus was elsewhere, on the feelings stirring deep inside him, feelings that had no place in a mission like this. He had been an assassin for as long as he could remember, trained since childhood to kill without hesitation, to eliminate threats with precision. Zorath had never once questioned his orders. The Carian Empire had been his purpose, his reason for existence. He had been taught that emotions were weaknesses, things that made one vulnerable. But now, standing in the shadows of this human city, Zorath wasn't so sure. As the crowd slowly began to disperse, Zorath moved through the streets, blending into the crowd without drawing attention. His eyes scanned the faces of the humans around him, each one different, yet united by something he didn't fully understand. They weren't perfect. He could see the struggles, the hardships they faced every day. But they fought for something that felt real, something more than mere survival. He had killed entire species in the name of his empire. And yet these humans were making him question his entire existence. Zorath's mind was a battlefield. He had never allowed himself to feel compassion, never given a second thought to the lives he ended. His world had been black and white, kill or be killed. But now, the lines were blurring. He couldn't shake the image of the child he had seen earlier, asking Marcus if the future would be safe for her generation. That innocent, hopeful question had struck a chord deep inside him. In that moment, Zoreth had seen something in her eyes that he had never seen in his own. A glimmer of trust. Trust that the future could be better, that humanity could overcome its flaws and rise above its struggles. And yet, the mission was clear. The Carian Empire had ordered him to kill Marcus Evans. They had no room for weakness, no tolerance for anything that could undermine their control. Zoreth had been trained to be a weapon, to follow orders without question. But now, for the first time in his life, he was questioning everything. As the evening wore on, Zoreth found himself standing in an alley, his thoughts racing. The shadows seemed to press in on him, suffocating him with their cold, relentless presence. What is this? He thought. Why am I hesitating? His hand twitched at his side, instinctively reaching for the weapon hidden beneath his cloak. It was his tool, his only companion on countless missions, always ready to do what needed to be done. But as his fingers brushed the smooth surface of the weapon, he stopped. He could feel it now, the weight of his choices pressing on him, heavy and suffocating. Zoreth's mind flashed to the faces of the people in the crowd, those who believed in Marcus, in something greater than themselves. He had seen the power of their unity, their resolve, and it had shaken him. Was it really possible that these humans could change the future, as Marcus had said? Could he, Zoreth, stand in the way of that? He closed his eyes, taking a deep breath, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like an assassin. He felt lost, and as he opened his eyes again, he realized something. He didn't want to kill Marcus Evans anymore. The very man he had been sent to destroy had become the symbol of everything Zoreth had never believed in. And now, Zoreth found himself unwilling to extinguish that flame. The mission was still clear, but his heart was not. Zoreth's mind spun as Marcus' words hung in the air between them. You're not defined by the orders you've been given, the diplomat had said. Zoreth, standing motionless in the dark, felt as though the ground beneath him had shifted. He had always known what he was, a weapon, a tool of the Carian Empire. He had been trained to kill, to follow commands without hesitation. But now, with Marcus Evans standing before him, looking at him as if he were something more than just a killer, Zoreth began to question everything he had known about himself. For a moment, Zoreth didn't know what to say. His hand still gripped the weapon at his side, a constant reminder of his purpose. He was supposed to end this. He was supposed to kill Marcus Evans, a threat to his people's control over Earth. Yet standing there, looking into Marcus' calm eyes, Zoreth felt something stir inside him. It wasn't fear. It wasn't even hesitation. It was a quiet, unsettling sense of doubt. I can't just leave, Zoreth finally said, his voice low and uncertain. The words felt foreign on his tongue. He had always been certain, always followed orders without question. But now, in this moment, he didn't feel so sure of himself. I've been sent here for a reason. The Carian Empire doesn't make mistakes. Marcus nodded, his expression unchanged. I don't think they're wrong about you, Zoreth. You've done what they've asked you to do, and you've done it well. But you're not a puppet. You're more than the weapon they've shaped you into. You can choose who you want to be. Zoreth took a step back, his mind whirling. He wanted to believe Marcus, to believe that there was something more for him beyond the Empire's control. But the weight of his past, the years of unquestioning service to the Carian cause, kept pulling him back. What would he be without the Empire? What would he become if he let go of everything he had known? You don't understand, Zoreth muttered, almost to himself. I've killed for them. I've destroyed entire worlds. They've made me who I am. Marcus didn't flinch at the words. I understand better than you think. I've fought for what I believe in, and I know that it's never easy to let go of the past. But you have the chance to make a different choice now. You don't have to keep being their weapon. The stillness in the air grew thick with tension. Zoreth's gaze shifted toward the distant lights of the city. He had spent his entire life as an instrument of destruction, moving from one mission to the next, always with a singular purpose. But in this moment, with Marcus' words echoing in his mind, he began to feel a change. He had always thought that his life was determined by the Empire's commands, but now he was beginning to question whether he was truly just a tool. Marcus stepped forward, closer now, his presence steady and confident. "It's not too late, Zoreth. You can choose to help us, to stand with humanity. Together, we can fight for something greater than just survival. We can fight for a future." Zoreth's hand relaxed around the weapon, and he let out a long breath, as though a weight was slowly being lifted from his shoulders. He had never thought of a future outside of his mission. He had never thought of anything other than what was asked of him. But now, faced with the quiet defiance in Marcus' eyes, Zoreth felt the first real flicker of possibility. "You think I could help you?" Zoreth asked, his voice barely above a whisper. He wasn't sure if he was asking Marcus or himself. The idea seemed impossible, but the more he thought about it, the more he wanted to believe it could be true. Marcus smiled, a quiet, knowing smile. "I don't think you're incapable of change. I think you're capable of more than what the Carian Empire has made you believe." Zoreth stood there, the silence between them now laden with something heavier than before, possibility. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, Zoreth could see a future that wasn't just filled with death, a future where he could choose who he was. The question still loomed over him, but now it wasn't just about his mission. It was about who he wanted to become. The weapon, or something more. The night air felt heavier now, as if the city itself was holding its breath, waiting for Zoreth to make a decision. Every instinct within him screamed to finish the mission, to do what he had been trained to do, what he had done countless times before. But something inside him had shifted, and now, standing in front of Marcus Evans, Zoreth found himself wrestling with a feeling he had never encountered before: uncertainty. "You're asking me to betray everything I've ever known," Zoreth finally said, his voice low and strained. The words felt almost painful to speak, as though they were tearing at something deep within him. He had always been loyal to the Carian Empire, always followed orders without question. But now, standing here, it felt as if he were being torn between two worlds. "I'm not asking you to betray anything," Marcus replied, his voice calm, unshaken. "I'm asking you to make your own choices, Zoreth. The Empire may have shaped you, but it doesn't own you. You are more than just their weapon. You're a person who can choose a different path." Zoreth's fists clenched at his sides, his mind in turmoil. Asterisk more than a weapon asterisk. The words rang in his head, louder than anything else. His entire life had been built around the idea that he was just a tool, an instrument of destruction. But now, standing in front of Marcus, that identity was crumbling. He didn't know who he was anymore. "What if I can't change?" Zoreth whispered, almost to himself. "What if I'm too far gone? What if I can't escape what I've been made into?" Marcus stepped closer, his voice filled with quiet conviction. "You're not too far gone. It's never too late to choose a different path. Everyone has a chance to change, even you." Zoreth's mind raced as he thought back on his past, the countless lives he had taken, the destruction he had caused. He had never once questioned his orders, never once considered that he could make a choice outside of his mission. But now, with Marcus standing before him, that certainty was slipping away. The very foundation of his existence was being tested, and Zoreth wasn't sure he could hold onto it much longer. "I spent my life doing their bidding," Zoreth said, his voice almost a growl. "The Carian Empire is all I know. I don't know who I am without them." "You're who you choose to be," Marcus replied, his words simple, yet profound. "You don't have to be a tool of the Empire. You can be more than that. You can be a part of something greater, something that isn't built on destruction and control." Zoreth closed his eyes, his heart pounding in his chest. He had been created for one purpose: to destroy. But Marcus' words struck a chord deep within him. Could it really be possible to change? Could he really walk away from everything he had ever known and become something different? He opened his eyes and looked at Marcus, the diplomat's face filled with quiet hope. The man before him wasn't afraid. He wasn't desperate. He believed that Zoreth could change, that he could choose a different path. For the first time, Zoreth felt a glimmer of hope that perhaps he wasn't just a weapon after all. "I don't know what comes next," Zoreth said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I can't kill you, Marcus. I can't do it." Marcus smiled, the expression warm and understanding. That's all I needed to hear. The weight that had been pressing down on Zoreth's chest lifted, just slightly. He had made a choice that had never seemed possible before, but now felt strangely right. He had come here to kill, but instead, he had found a chance for something else, a chance for a new beginning. For the first time in his life, Zoreth felt like he had the power to shape his own destiny. He wasn't just a weapon anymore. He was something more. And whatever came next, he would face it with the knowledge that he had chosen this path for himself. The decision lingered in Zoreth's mind, still raw and unfamiliar. He had never before made a choice so personal, so free of the Empire's influence. For years, his entire existence had been dictated by the cold orders of the Carian Empire. But now, standing in front of Marcus, he was facing something new, something he had never thought possible. The idea of alliance, of trust, was foreign to him, yet the path ahead felt strangely clear. Marcus regarded him with an understanding that was almost overwhelming. Zoreth wasn't sure if it was the man's natural charisma or the sheer weight of his conviction that made him feel as though he were standing on the precipice of something monumental. For the first time in years, Zoreth felt hope. Hope not just for humanity, but for himself as well. "You don't have to figure it all out right now," Marcus said, as if reading his thoughts. "You've already taken the first step. That's more than most ever do." Zoreth took a deep breath, exhaling slowly. "I've never been free. I don't know how to be anything other than what I was made to be." "You'll learn," Marcus replied, a hint of a smile tugging at his lips. "You're not alone in this. We all have to learn how to break free from the things that hold us back, and it's easier when you have someone by your side." Zoreth's gaze flickered toward the ground. Tomion by your side, the thought felt foreign to him. He had always worked alone, an assassin with no ties to anything or anyone. It was the only way he had known how to live. But now, with Marcus standing beside him, the idea of connection didn't seem so terrifying. "I've always been alone," Zoreth muttered. "I've never trusted anyone. The Carian Empire taught me that. They taught me that trust is a weakness. And now you're learning that it's not," Marcus said, his voice firm but kind. "Trust is what makes us stronger. Alone, we can be broken. Together, we can accomplish far more than any of us could on our own." Zoreth shifted his weight, the weight of those words pressing down on him. He had never considered it before. His entire life had been about self-reliance, about trusting no one but himself. But here, now standing at a crossroads, he began to realize that perhaps his way had been wrong. Perhaps there was more to life than following orders, than living in isolation. "I can't promise I'll be perfect," Zoreth said, his voice rough. "I don't know how to be what you want me to be, but I'll try. For you, and for the people who believe in me." Marcus's eyes softened, a look of approval in them. "That's all anyone can ask for. No one's perfect. It's about trying, about being better than you were yesterday." Zoreth felt a strange warmth spread through him, something he hadn't felt in years. It wasn't the warmth of a battlefield victory, nor the cold satisfaction of a mission accomplished. It was something more, a sense of belonging, a sense that, for the first time, he wasn't alone in this world. "I don't know what comes next," Zoreth admitted, his voice quieter now. "But I know one thing. I can't go back to being what I was." Marcus nodded. "And you won't. You're stronger than that. And I'll be here, every step of the way. Zorath's mind raced, but for once he felt a calmness inside him that had been absent for so long. There were still so many questions, so many uncertainties, but for the first time, he was facing them willingly. He was no longer a weapon. He was a person, with the power to make choices, and the future, while uncertain, no longer seemed so terrifying. "I don't know where this path will lead," Zorath said, looking Marcus in the eye, "but I'm ready to find out." Marcus smiled, his expression warm. "That's the first step towards something greater." And with that, Zorath knew that his journey had truly begun. He wasn't sure what lay ahead, but for the first time in his life, he felt ready to face it. The days that followed were filled with uncertainty, but also something else: purpose. Zorath was no longer a lone assassin in the shadows, carrying out orders with no questions asked. Now he was a part of something greater, something that stretched beyond the rigid boundaries of the Carian Empire. Marcus had kept his word, introducing Zorath to others. People who, like him, had once been driven by a singular cause, but who had now found a greater reason to fight. For the first time in years, Zorath felt like he belonged. It wasn't easy, adjusting to a world where people worked together, shared their thoughts, and trusted one another. Every conversation, every interaction was a reminder of how different this life was from the one he had known. But there was also something undeniably powerful in it. The unity, the camaraderie. It was something Zorath had never experienced, and it was starting to change him. It wasn't just Marcus anymore. Zorath had begun to bond with others in their circle: soldiers, diplomats, even civilians who had joined the cause. They didn't treat him as an outsider or a weapon, but as an equal, someone who had something to offer. And Zorath realized that, perhaps for the first time in his life, he had a place in this world. But as much as the new life appealed to him, Zorath knew that the Carian Empire would never allow him to simply walk away. They would come for him. For Marcus, for all of them. The price of defying the Empire would be high, and Zorath could feel the weight of it pressing on him each day. It wasn't long before the first sign of danger arrived. A message came through, an encrypted communication from one of Zorath's old contacts. It was a warning. The Carian Empire was preparing a full-scale operation to hunt down Marcus and his allies. Zorath's heart sank as he read the message. The Empire was ruthless. Nothing mattered to them except control, and Marcus' growing influence had made him a target. "We knew this would come eventually," Marcus said, his voice steady as he addressed the group. "The Carians won't just let us disappear, but we've come too far to back down now." Zorath stood at the back of the room, listening as Marcus laid out their options. There was no escaping the war that was now inevitable. The Empire would not rest until they had eliminated the threat, and Zorath knew that he had to make a choice. He had already made one decision. He wasn't going back to the life of an assassin. But now his decision would be tested in a way he never imagined. "Marcus," Zorath said, stepping forward. His voice was calm, but the weight of what he was about to say settled heavily on him. "I'm not just a soldier in the shadows anymore. I'm with you. I'll fight. I'll fight for this, for all of us." Marcus looked at him, a flicker of pride in his eyes. "I know, and that's why we have a chance." The room fell silent, the reality of their situation settling over them. There was no going back now. Zorath was committed, not just to his own survival, but to the survival of this new life, this new cause. He wasn't just fighting for a future free from the Empire's grasp. He was fighting for himself. As the meeting concluded and the plans to prepare for the battle ahead were set into motion, Zorath felt a strange sense of calm. He knew that the coming fight would be dangerous, that the stakes were higher than anything he had ever faced. But there was something else that fueled him now, something that had never existed in his old life: hope. For the first time, Zorath wasn't just a tool in someone else's war. He was a warrior with his own purpose. He was fighting for freedom. And that made all the difference. The war against the Carian Empire was about to begin in earnest, but Zorath was no longer just an assassin. He was a part of something much greater than himself. The time for hesitation was over. The Carian Empire was closing in, and every moment that passed brought them closer to a confrontation they could no longer avoid. Zorath stood alongside Marcus and the others, his heart beating steadily in his chest. The preparations were almost complete, and the sense of unity among the group had never been stronger. The fear of the Empire's wrath still loomed, but Zorath felt an unfamiliar sense of resolve. He had never fought for anything but survival before. Now he was fighting for freedom, for the future he had never believed possible. "Are you ready?" Marcus asked, his voice calm but carrying the weight of their shared purpose. He had led them this far, and now they were at the edge of a battle that would decide everything. Zorath looked out over the makeshift camp, the shadows of soldiers moving in preparation. They were ready. They knew what was at stake, and for the first time in his life, Zorath felt that he was truly a part of something. "I'm ready," Zorath said, his voice steady, though the weight of the upcoming battle hung in the air like a storm. It wasn't just the physical fight that lay ahead. It was the battle for his own soul, the fight to stand against everything he had been trained to believe in. The first wave of Carian ships arrived just before dawn. They came in droves, their massive warships descending from the skies like an unstoppable force. Zorath's pulse quickened, but he kept his focus. He had faced enemies before, but this time it was different. This wasn't just a mission. This was a stand for something bigger. This was about more than just surviving. This was about choosing who he wanted to be. "We fight as one," Marcus said, his eyes sweeping across the gathered fighters. "This is our moment. We don't back down. We stand together." Zorath nodded, his hand on the weapon at his side. He wasn't just a tool of the Carian Empire anymore. He had chosen this path, and he would see it through to the end. The first shots rang out, and the battle began in earnest. The air was filled with the deafening roar of explosions, the sharp crack of gunfire, and the chaotic sounds of war. Zorath fought with precision, his movements fluid and efficient, but now there was something more behind each strike. Each life he took no longer felt like an order fulfilled. It felt like a choice. He wasn't just killing for the Empire. He was fighting to protect the future he had begun to believe in. As the battle raged on, Zorath found himself side by side with Marcus and the others. There was a rhythm to it now, a sense of unity that he had never experienced before. The Carian forces were formidable, but they weren't invincible. Zorath knew the truth now. The Empire had always relied on fear, on control. But what they didn't understand was that there was something more powerful than control: freedom. And that was what they were fighting for. The tide of battle began to turn. Slowly but surely, the resistance pushed the Carian forces back. Zorath's heart raced, his adrenaline surging, but his mind remained focused. He was no longer just an assassin. He was a leader, a fighter, standing alongside those who believed in something greater than themselves. And as the final wave of Carian ships retreated, Zorath felt the weight of it settle over him. They had won. The Empire had been defeated, at least for now. But the real victory was in what Zorath had found within himself. He wasn't just a weapon. He was a person who had made his own choices, who had chosen a different path. As the dust settled and the cheers of victory filled the air, Zorath looked at Marcus. The man who had shown him that there was more to life than destruction, the one who had given him a chance at something better. "We did it," Marcus said, his voice filled with quiet pride. Zorath nodded, a small, genuine smile tugging at his lips. "We did." And for the first time in his life, Zorath felt truly free.